2020, $932 billion. These people that are setting up these entitlement programs really have no clue how these things are going to evolve over the decades to come. Who's going to pay for Medicare? Well, this is what's expected to happen in terms of the increased number of beneficiaries and the number of workers. We talked about how with Social Security there were 149 workers per beneficiary. Well, the worker to beneficiary ratio is expected to decline in Medicare from 3.7 to 2.4. It's not going to be enough people paying into the system to sustain it for the people that are taking it out. And I know there are a lot of criticisms about inflated the money supply. And when that happened, the farmers started charging more and more for their crops. And now the crops are unaffordable. So the government comes in with price controls on the farmers and their crops. Well, when that happens, price controls, the first thing that happens is shortages. So the farmers would actually sell their money to sell their agriculture and crops to the British, who would pay them a fair price. And that's why they wouldn't sell to the Continental Army, and that's what led to the shortage of food in Mount Forest. But we could go on and on about the bad results of price control. And Milton Friedman, the other famous economist out of the Chicago School of Boston Heritage, said every single level, government control over every facet of our lives, it will not be because of political environment, which is either about the ways of price control. Well, sure, we'll just cut money to the hospitals and doctors. They're still getting cash. They've got plenty of money, right? There's no reason you can't just cut that. And there's all this trade, fraud, and abuse, and waste, and they just need to tighten their belts and trim their blades. We'll just cut payments to the hospitals and doctors. Well, when you look at the cost of taking care of Medicare patients, overall, Medicare only covers about 90% of the cost of taking care of Medicare patients. Now, there are certain specialties where Medicare is a moneymaker for the hospital. Cardiac surgery, my own specialty, makes money for the hospital. Orthopedics does. But when you look at all the Medicare patients that the hospital takes care of, on the whole, Medicare gives the hospital about 90% of what it costs to care for them. And you can see this steady downward trend. Now, although there was a short bump up in 2010, the rest of the trend is down and down and down and down. And so it's 90% of what it costs to care for Medicare patients now. The government estimates that, and this is the government's own estimate, okay, the Medicare Trustees Report, it's estimated this reimbursement is going to be 15% negative by 2019, 25% negative by 2030, and 40% negative by 2050. And this is where we're headed. Well, doctors make plenty of money, right? And we just cut their fees. We just cut money driving everything, cars, and all that sort of stuff. We just cut their money, right? Well, this is what we're dealing with. This is what has happened with what it costs for us to run a practice. And this is what's happening with our Medicare payments. And I can tell you, when you adjust these numbers for inflation, for my own specialty, our fees have been cut 82% over the last 20 years when you adjust them for inflation. It's very hard for us to sustain the practice with those kinds of cuts. Currently, when you use private insurance as a comparison to Medicare, Medicare reimburses about 80% of what private insurance pays. But the government estimates that in 20 years, it's going to be 40% of what private insurance pays. And one of the reasons the Medicare Trustees Report states that their actuarial analysis and the Trustees Report is not accurate is because physicians are slated to get a 29% cut. And they know that if they do that, you just can't stay in practice, you can't take care of Medicare patients any longer. So they realize that it's not going to happen. So the numbers are actually going to be much, much worse. We've already covered that. Fool me 3 times. Okay. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Now the American public is fooled the 3rd time with Obamacare. The American Care Act was signed, the Affordable Care Act was signed into law on March 23rd, 2010. This is what's going to happen to this. The law has incentives and penalties. That's the whole structure of Obamacare. It has incentives to make insurance more affordable if you want it, and it has penalties to make you get it if you don't want it. I'm going to break this down. The incentives for the state, okay? If you expand Medicaid, then you will get more government money for your Medicaid program. Medicaid is a shared expense between the states and the federal government. The states run their own individual Medicaid programs. Each state has a different name for their own Medicaid program. But they share the expense with the federal government. The government says if you expand your Medicaid program, we'll give you some more money, at least early on in the first few years. There's no guarantee what the long-term support is going to be for that. However, the Supreme Court decision said that they could not force the state to do this. We'll talk about below that thing. Penalties for business. If you have 50 employees, you're eligible for a tax credit or a subsidy to help you go out and buy insurance on these exchanges. And when the act was put into place, it was estimated that the average subsidy would be about $4,000 per $3,910 per person. But they would also penalize, and the penalty was $95 in the first year, and steady go up, or 1% of your taxable income, whichever is greater. So that was the whole idea. We'll give a carrot to the state to get them to expand their Medicaid program. We'll penalize the businesses that don't offer health care to their employees. We'll penalize individuals that don't go out there and buy it. We'll also give low-income individuals money to help buy health insurance. Well, a key point here you need to remember, we're going to talk about this a little later, is that if the law is written, as it is written, only the states who set up state exchanges have subsidies and penalties. The states could not be forced to set up their own exchange. They could do so if they wanted to. And if the state set up the exchange, the subsidies and penalties that we talked about on the last slide apply. If the state did not set up the exchange, then the federal government would set up the exchange for your state. And as the law is written, if it was a state or the federal government set up the exchange, the law is very clear. No subsidies, no penalties. Remember that thought. Come back to that. How many of the states thought setting up exchanges was a great idea? 14. So in 36 of the states, exchanges are run by the federal government. Remember, the law says it's the federal exchange, no subsidies, no penalties. Obamacare, promise number one. Obamacare will reduce the deficit, as he said. But it is a cause that will not, I repeat, will not add to our deficit. I've set down a rule for my staff and my team, and I've said this to Congress. Health care reform must be and will be deficit neutral in the next decade. How's that promise work out? The original cost of Obamacare is supposed to be $949 billion. In February this year, 8 months before it came out, the new cost was $1,900 billion. Almost double. The subsidies that we talked about that were in the $3,000 range, well, they're actually going to be in the $5,500 range. Now, they're going to offset some of this extra cost, extra $1 trillion cost here, by $200 billion penalties on the uninsured and employers. We just know that this year they delayed the employer penalty by 1 year. And $150 billion is supposedly offset by taxes on the high premium insurance plans. So if you got these Cadillac plans with high super duper plans, it's going to get extra tax on them. And then $200 billion offset by new taxes. We'll talk a little bit about that later. What else did they promise? Medicare will be protected. You heard that, right? Medicare is going to protect it. Obamacare is going to protect Medicare. Why? It's Paul Ryan, the Republicans, that wants to push grandma off the cliff, right? Well, they're going to cut $716 billion from Medicare. At least $150 billion of this is going to be from Medicare Advantage. And already Medicare Advantage patients around the country are getting cancellation letters. And they're also cutting doctors out of the Medicare Advantage program. So not only are patients getting dropped from, physicians are getting dropped from. So, when they say you can keep your doctor, that's not true. A lot of doctors are being dropped from Medicare Advantage plans, signing up for health care under Obamacare, you need to go and look, and you can research this. And it turns out that all the success the government's claiming about people that are signing up for health care under Obamacare, 85 to 90% of them have signed up for it. Your government is being very dishonest with you. Claiming that these people are successful signing up on these exchanges for health care, or they're signing up for one of these exchanges for normal Medicaid. And we look at how bad Medicaid is for the state of Florida. Remember we said that Medicare only covers 90% of the cost of what it costs to take care of a Medicare patient. In the yellow states, Medicaid pays 70% of Medicare. And so you see Florida here is one of the yellow states. Medicaid is a terrible problem for providers in the state of Florida. But what about this promise? We've all heard about this one lately, right? If you like your health care plan, you'll be able to keep your health plan, period. If you're one of the more than 250 million Americans who already have health insurance, you will keep your health insurance. This law will only make it more secure and more affordable. And we've been hearing about that for the last 6 years it's rolled out, right? We knew in advance this was not true. The government knew in advance it was not true. When Obama spoke those words, he knew they were not true. Okay? We knew that, first of all, the employers were going to react to this by dropping employer-provided coverage. And you don't hear as much about that right now today as you hear about the individual market, the people who don't have employer-provided coverage. But employers have dropped coverage, they have cut back, and they have dropped family members off. We'll talk about that in just a second. The Congressional Budget Office estimated that up to 8 million people that were covered by their employer would lose their coverage. But when you look at the individual market, where people are buying insurance themselves, and it's not provided by the employer, these people are getting their insurance policies canceled by the hundreds of thousands, and it will be in the millions. And we're looking now at 200,000, probably closer to 800,000 in New Jersey, 500,000 in California, 300,000 in Florida. There's far more people that have lost their health care insurance than have actually managed to sign up for a plan on the Obama exchanges. Children losing coverage. Number one, the IRS will require that employers don't have to cover the whole family. As we said, there was a $2,000 penalty if you didn't. You had over 50 employees and you didn't provide health insurance. Well, they say, okay, fine. But the IRS says we don't have to cover your family. All we have to do is cover you. And that's why we see many large corporations that are dropping family coverage. So the children are getting dropped out of this. But also they made it so unfavorable for the insurers that it's almost impossible now to get a child on the policy. So you don't want coverage for you or your spouse, but you want something for your kid. Insurers have made it almost impossible to get. And as far as the pre-existing condition requirements, and now there are 20 states out of 50 that don't have any insurer in that state that will provide a child-only policy. Seniors lose coverage if physicians refuse to take Medicare patients through reimbursement cuts. And right now, seniors want to see doctors won't take Medicaid. That's something that will skyrocket as these reimbursements continue to fall. I need to tell you about this because a lot of people don't know about this. Say you think Medicare is such a crummy deal, and you know it's going nowhere, and your doctor's getting dropped out of Medicare Advantage, and you don't think you're going to get good care with Medicare in the years to come. You can't get out of it. You're stuck. Just like your doctor, you're stuck. And I'll tell you, there's 2 reasons for this. Number one, if you come to me and you say, Dr. Moore, I really like your services, and I know you don't like Medicare, but I'm going to pay you out of my own pocket for financing my family contributing, and I agree to take care of you outside of Medicare. 2 things happen. One, Medicare will not pay you for your health care for that particular procedure. Number 2, as a physician, I am banned for 2 years for taking care of any other Medicare patients. And this was really shocking. If you opt out of Medicare completely, you lose your Social Security benefits. And not only that, you're just paying Social of actuaries predict that insurance policies are going to increase by an average of 32%. That's an average. When you look at the studies that were done by the states, looking at what was going to happen in each individual state, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Colorado, increases of 19 to 30%. Ohio, 55 to 85%. Maine, Oregon, and Nevada, similar increase. California, at least 20% higher. We've already seen premiums for health insurance go $3,000 or even more. Not only are they raising the cost of the premiums, they're raising the deductibles. Well, why is it? What is Obamacare doing is making healthcare insurance unaffordable. They should name it Unaffordable Care Act. What is Obamacare doing is causing premiums to go up so bad? Well, the first are the mandates. They're telling the insurance companies now they must provide all these services that were not originally part of insurance. In other words, you're now going to get a plan that's going to cover all these things that you don't want. I can guarantee you, I'm 54 years old. I don't need a maternity plan. I'm past childbearing age. But I'm going to have to pay for maternity care, and I may not have the best figure in the world, but I don't intend on getting breast implants anytime soon. And that all goes into these things that are mandated coverage. They are telling the insurance they must cover, so that's why the premiums are going up. And I want you to think about this for just a second. If you're selling healthcare insurance out there, and there are mandates in there that you're making people pay, and you as a consumer are paying for services that you're never going to use and never going to need, that's basically a tax. You basically are being forced to pay into the system of redistribution and now redistribute benefits to somebody else. So in its own way, the insurance policy is like its own little socialist program. So it's redistributing money from people who are being forced to pay for services they're never going to need, such as paying for St. Luke's birth control. Guaranteed issuance. Well, we've all heard about this, right? That's not insurance. It's not insurance that you can go get it anytime you want it. It's not insurance that you can go buy it after fire insurance after your house is already burned down. And that's what's going to happen is that people know that they don't have to buy insurance until they get sick. And so because of that, that means the insurance companies have to account for that, and that causes the premiums to go up. Community rating, this means that you can't charge higher risk, older, sicker people more than healthy young people. There's a cap, there's a limit. You can only charge for your oldest and sickest and unhealthy people 3 times the lowest rate you charge anybody. So they have to raise the premiums for everybody. The medical loss ratio rebates, they basically have established a law that says that the insurance company has to spend a maximum of 20% of administrative costs. At least 80% of the premium money coming in must be spent on health care. So the way to get more administrative costs covered is to raise the rates and the whole thing. Finally, adverse selection. And this is what's going to really be crucial over the next year. Obamacare only works if young, healthy people sign up. And there's no incentive to do that whatsoever. There's a $95 penalty they can pay, and there's no reason that you would not pay $95 and then just wait until you got sick to get your health insurance, as opposed to spending thousands and thousands of dollars. This is really the sort of the Achilles heel of the program right now, and nobody is just rushing out there to sign up as a young, healthy person to help support the whole system. And Obamacare also promises that no one making less than $250,000 will see their taxes go up. He said, I can make a firm pledge. What we do with those firm pledges that work. Under my plan, no family making less than $250,000 will receive any form of tax free, not your income tax, not your payroll tax, not your capital gains tax, not any of your taxes. This is a list of Obamacare taxes. And you can see that there's quite a number of ways that people are going to get taxed. You know, one of the things that really has been interesting is they're going to higher tax methods of they've cut the size of the health savings account contributions. You can only now take $2,500 a year into your HSA. That's eliminating a tax benefit, which is the same as a tax hike. And your deducting medical expenses, they've cut that from 10% down to 7.5%. Overall, we've seen an enormous adverse effect on the economy. We've seen employers that have reduced hiring. We've seen employers which employees that are part-time jobs, and physicians are just giving up. Physicians are taking early retirement, finding some way to get out, and young people coming behind are not interested in going into medicine as a career. They're certainly not interested in going into primary care. They don't want to go to medical school and come out hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And I can also tell you that, as we said, price control results in shortages, they result in poor quality. The quality of the people that are going into our training now is diminishing. Right now, of the residents that are coming out of general surgery, a third of them have to go back and do remedial training. We just aren't seeing the same quality of person go into medicine as a lot of them that we used to see 20 years ago. This is a slide that I stole from somebody, and I guess there's another thing here from somebody else that stole it over here, which is a new Obamacare organizational chart. And this is what is really, really key. First, listen to the control, physical, all streams, the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Here's your physician down here. Here's your patient down here. All this is your government bureaucracy. So this is the most frightening part. Secretary of Health and Human Services. And what's really, really, really frightening about Obamacare is not the economics of it. It's not the penalties and the mandates. It's not the cancel insurance policies. It's not the tax hike. It's not the effects of the economy, not hiring and people going to part-time work. The frightening part of Obamacare is that we are now seeing regulation without representation. Obamacare has brought under the executive branch of government those functions that are to be left to the state and to our elected officials in the Congress and in the Senate. What do I mean by that? The IRS has started making rulings on Obamacare that are outside of legislation as it is written. Example, when we said that employers now don't have to cover families, that was an IRS ruling. You remember quite a while back I said that the law stated that in a state that did not have a state exchange, a state that only had a federal exchange, which was 36 out of 50, there were no subsidies, no penalties. Remember me saying that? Okay. The IRS said no. The IRS said that states that do not have state exchanges but only federal ones, that all of the above applies. That is not in the law. They said that in states that have federal exchanges, there will be subsidies and there will be penalties, and there will be an employer penalty and an employee penalty. That is a decision, a ruling made by the IRS. It is not in the legislation. And certainly, by far, the most fearsome part of this is the Independent Payment Advisory Board. Some of you may have heard this called a death panel. So let's talk about this just a bit. Historically, Medicare payments to hospital providers were worked through certain Medicare and Medicaid services in Congress. They set up the reimbursement formulas. They set up the DRG formulas to determine how hospitals are going to pay, and they set up the codes for how physicians are going to be paid. This is a negotiating process that went on year after year after year. The Independent Payment Advisory Board is a presidentially appointed panel whose mission is to reduce Medicare costs. And by that not part of the law. If you look at the law, there's nothing in there that says a state or federal exchange can do subsidies and penalties. And if only 14 states have subsidies exchanges, and the other 36 don't, in that case, it's ways to the court system. That may really hold some hope of bringing this to a stop. And that legal avenue appears to have the strongest chance. The Bill of Rights said some people in the state may attribute this to the Kentucky bill in a different version, but it said democracy cannot exist in a permanent form of government. It can only exist when the voters discover and devote themselves to our justice and public treasure. James Barton said democracy is two wolves and a sheep going to what to have for dinner. Great John Hyatt, the Austrian economist we talked about, said it would scarcely be an exaggeration to say that the greatest danger of liberty today comes from men who are most needed and most powerful in modern government, namely the efficient expert administrators explicitly concerned with what they regard as the public good. As Ludwig von Mises, another Austrian economist, said, government cannot make a man richer, but it can make him poorer. B.J. O'Rourke said, if you think health care is expensive now, wait till you see how much it costs when it's free. And our most great intellectual thinker today, Thomas Sowell, that in his book, The Vision of the Millennium, what is intellectually interesting about visions are their assumptions and their reasoning. But what is socially crucial is the extent to which these visions are resistant to evidence. Characteristic patterns that develop among the Millennium dealing with the repeated failures of their policies based on their vision. Finally, there is a phenomenon of honor prophets among the Millennium that continue to honor as their predictions fail by vast margins, time and again. And really, the crux of this is who gets to decide. We've already shown that Medicare is insolvent. Medicare is going broke. It's not sustainable. We've added the worst possible solution to it by putting Obamacare on this. I hate to break the news to you, but there's not enough money for everybody to get everything in health care that they would like. It's just simply not possible. And we can go to a free market solution where the consumer gets to decide what they're willing to spend, what they can afford, what type of health care policy they would like, how much their family can afford to support them. And the only other alternative is to have the government decide for you. Have the government make those decisions for you. And that's what's going to happen. Government take over health care. Just as we've seen that the executive branch is taking over the functions of the legislative branch, we will see that the administrators will be deciding your level of health care, what you get, who gets to decide for whom. Thank you very much. I would also mention to you that since you guys have been supplementing the health care register, I have a book that came out this year called Surviving the Suffering. It's based on my 20 years of practice as a Christian heart surgeon and looked at the different types of suffering that we encounter from a biblical standpoint, realizing that there are many different kinds of suffering that we must diagnose with the type of suffering we're undergoing so that we know how best to treat it. And if you're interested, we can talk some more about that over at the table. I'd love to like and further reading and references if you want. Thank you so much for your time and your attention.
Do you want to look a little bit about health care? I'm sure you did. What we're going to do now is have a Q&A. We're going to bounce back and forth. I'll let the doctor select the person that's going to speak, and the microphone will go to that person.
Will the situation be any different for both the healthcare provider and the individual for those that have, in addition to Medicare, a supplemental plan, as it's often referred to? So those that have private insurance as a supplement, those that have TRICARE, for example, as a supplement. Will things be different on either end or both?
I think that it would be different for the individual because they're going to have less out-of-pocket expenses. It will not be different for the provider. Our fees are set
Use the microphone.
Speak up, please. Sorry.
We can't hear you.
Okay, can you, is it any better now? Better? It will probably be better for the individual because they will have fewer co-pays and less out-of-pocket expenses. It will be no different for the provider because our fees are set in stone. They're not open to negotiation. We can't balance bills, like we used to in the future where we would set a fee and if you make your own pay a certain amount of fees and you bill for the rest. This is a long effect of the provider.
Okay, a question on this side?
How did you stop?
The question was, how would you stop Obamacare? I'm somewhat pessimistic about that. I think that the strongest legal challenge, the one that has the most legs to it, is the one that goes has made its way up the court system about the IRS falsely claiming that states that have federal exchanges can do substance accounting. And so far, the court is making its way up. I know that the Liberty Council, which my wife is affiliated with, for women in half the nation, has a lawsuit out there basically attacking every single aspect of the law. The reporter me that the contraceptive bill, the fact that the bill was a shell bill, traded back and forth between the House and Senate. I'm really not sure how that land. I mean, if this court decision about the mandates doesn't go through, we're pretty much stuck with this at least until 2017, because we're going to have a majority of people in the Senate, majority of people in the House, and if the President is overturned. There's been a great deal of hoopla lately about the failures of the website and the technical aspects of that. It's miserable that that whole system has been. I think it's ultimately a solvable problem.
Can't hear you.
I think that ultimately a solvable problem. They will be able to solve the technical aspects of the website enrollment issues. The thing will likely, as it plays out, melt down. I mean, the system is designed for young, healthy people to pay into the system to support the older, sicker people. I mean, if you think about it, it's a horrible deal for the younger people who voted for this type of policy. It's a huge transfer of wealth from that generation to the older generation. I think, in my pessimistic sense, that that was the whole plan all along, was for this thing to fall apart. I think what's caught the administration by surprise is that it's falling apart a lot quicker than they expected. And the public outrage on this is it does deteriorate and fall apart. There may be some room for us to change things in the next election.
Use the microphone, please.
I just wonder if technology can cause the falling apart of this whole thing when the monster on the screen that you provided is so overwhelming. And once they get the technology satisfied, then we're up and running. And the thought was
Well, you kind of answered the question I had. This thing, I believe, was planned way back with the SARS, and it was all set up that this was going to happen. Now, the thing that hasn't happened is the young people are still not seeing any of this. Like our kids are young, we have an actuary son. They don't see any of these problems. And I don't know what it's going to take before they open up their eyes and realize that they need to wake up, because things are going to change and they need to stop this thing by their voting and get informed. Now, so my question is, how do you reach these young people that love this man so much? They think he's the coolest thing there is.
I think you're absolutely right. They're very enamored of him, and you said they don't see the impact. They get to stay on their parents' policy for their 26 years of age, and so when they get out and start earning money and try to make a living and start realizing that the opportunities that are there for them are not the same as for their parents. They're there for us.
But they're already making more money.
No question. A lot, and I think you're absolutely right. The youth are very difficult in this. They don't see the impact. Even the ones that are out of the house and they're working, I mean, if you take a look at what is, they're looking at a $95 penalty versus thousands of dollars of health insurance that they don't need. And if they do need it, they can go get it after they're already sick. So there is very little incentive for the youth to join up with this. And that is going to ultimately hurt the program. Because if those people don't get involved, they don't support it. In my philosophy about this has been recently that is to stand back and get out of the way of this thing and just let it go. Let it go full force. Don't try to stop it. Let it hit all the bad outcomes that are coming. We've already seen the people that are getting their policies canceled, and just let it go. And I think that may stir up public outrage. Things that turn around the next election.
Doctor, your presentation to us has made it readily apparent that there is adverse impact, considerable adverse impact to the healthcare provider, doctors and facilities and whatnot. What do you see as the major adverse impact to the retirees who have Medicare and may or may not have a supplement? What's the major adverse impact you see to us?
Well, I think for the people that are on Medicare, what you have to be looking for in the future are the things that we talked about as a result of price control. Eventually, there will be shortages. They are not going to have enough money to keep Medicare funded at the same rate they have. And with Obamacare, they're pulling more billions of dollars out of this. Money to the hospital. Money to... This thing's not battery. Yes, sir.
Doctor, we didn't hear the question. Could you repeat it, please?
Okay, I was talking about, the extension of this, if the government really wants to do it, could push this into the point where physicians and hospitals are really an extension of the government. Much like the Church of Germany was an extension of the government there. And the pastors didn't do anything because they were being paid by the government. And I'm talking about right of conscience. Euthanasia, abortion, things that physicians and nurses and practitioners will be called upon to do because they are under the economic thumb of the entity that's paying. And I just wonder if you have any feelings.
Well, there's sort of two components to that question. One is the economic aspect of government involvement in medicine and where that would ultimately head. And the second is, how does the physician and the patient respond to that? I don't want to get into a huge lecture on economics. Let me just briefly say that there's a very distinct difference between fascism, socialism, and communism. Okay? Fascism, as we know, began in Italy under Mussolini back in the years after World War I. The word fascist comes from fascistic, or bundle. Everything was bundled together. And the concept there was that we still had private enterprise that was run by the government. The government controlled what went on. The next level was socialism. Socialism, we're all familiar about the redistribution of things throughout the economy, to each according to his needs or each according to his ability. And then ultimately moving into communism, which is the abolishment of all private property and the total government control of production. So that's just sort of a brief economic primer. We actually, in my opinion, Medicare, government medicine, is not socialized medicine. It's fascist medicine. In other words, we, as hospitals and private practitioners, have our own businesses, our own practices, but the government tells us how to run it. The government is not actually running the hospitals or the medical practices at this point in this country, like they are over in England, the National Health Care Service. Now, the beauty about having a fascist system is that the government is to tell you what to do and tell you how to do it, to put the regulations in place that you must follow. And yet, when things don't work out, they don't get the blame. They get to point the finger back at you. When the gas prices go up, they don't get the blame for their poor economic policy. They get to call the oil company executives in front of Congress and demand and to explain the reason why the prices are so high. So, right now, that's sort of where we are. If we move into a social system, such as the national healthcare system or the Canadian system or all the other systems like that around the world, then things change even further. Then not only is the government telling people what to do, they're actually running the whole show. And that does result in a lot of very, very unfortunate outcomes. I actually have a website called survivingsuffering.com, and I've addressed that in a couple of the articles that I've published there. The title one is What's Your Life Worth Anyway, which deals extensively with the whole euthanasia involvement that we see over in Europe. I'll just mention to you that a couple of aspects of that. One is the Liverpool care pathway over the National Health Service in England, where if your healthcare providers, your team, decide that you aren't really long for this world, they will withdraw food, water, and other support from you. And it turns out that in enormous number of cases, the patients and their families are not told this is done. It works out to about 30,000 patients a year from the Liverpool care pathway without their knowledge. And just this last week, there was a report out of the National Health Care Service, and there was a patient who was critically ill, and the healthcare team decided to withdraw support on that patient, and the family did not want to. The family wanted to continue treating their family member, and the courts there decided, I'm sorry,
Doctor, how long do you think it will be before we have single payer?
That's a scary question, and that's sort of.
That's where they're headed.
Yeah, I mean, if this system melts down, it depends on who's in charge. If the system melts down bad enough, and we have free market people in charge, then they'll repeal it and throw it out. If it melts down and it's bad enough, and we have progressive in charge, then they'll just say, well, we just need to go straight to single payer. It's going to depend who's in charge.
Any questions on that? This needs to be more public.
Okay, in the bill, there's something written about the, not-for-profit hospitals, that they're going to be penalized if they give free care to indigents.
I'm not sure I can answer that question exactly. I'm somewhat familiar with what you're talking about. There is something that they were made, I think it's a $50,000 penalty if you cannot document that you are providing indigent care to the level they need. It's not